Today, we woke up the stocks come crashing lower. Then we have a late day push up higher. The next 2 days are going to be absolutely critical for stocks. Come over and look at the fear and greed index. Right now, we're sitting at 27. Earlier in the day, we saw us actually push over into extreme fear. Now we're trying to push back up. Was today nothing more than a buying opportunity? Now, when we look at how the indices fared across the board, the Dow was up 358 points. The NASDAQ was down 75 points. S&P 500 up 9 points. Russell 2000 up 4.2. Now, when we look at advancing issues versus declining, we had 49% of issues declining on the day. Then when we come over and look at the sectors across the board, notice a majority of the sectors were in the green. And that kind of goes along with one of the themes we were talking about on the live stream. We come over and we look at the SPY, for instance. Look at the SPY today. The SPY was able to come back and essentially fill the gap. And I did think this gap would be filled. And that kind of got me in a little bit of trouble today because I kept trying to play for the gap being filled for the S&P. Why? We had 2 consecutive days where the market actually gapped lower. We can see this a little bit clearer on the hourly chart. Gap number 1 on Friday, gap number 2 out here today. And if we look at how much the SPY actually closed in the green, the SPY was only in the green by 0.16. However, if we look at the equal weight S&P 500, which would be the RSP ticker symbol, we can see that the RSP was actually up 0.82%. Now, why could this be? We talked about this during the live stream. If you don't want to miss the next time I go live, make sure you're subscribed and you have the bell notifications turned on for all. But essentially, it boils down to this. We come over and look at the weighting of stocks across the board. Apple represents 7.25% of the S&P 500. NVIDIA 6.7%. Microsoft 6.3, and you can see really the top 10 holdings have a majority of the weight of the S&P 500. So we can see as the RSP was gaining strength throughout the day, that it was basically giving us a heads up that, hey, everything is not as bad as it seems. And look at even at the Dow Jones. Look at the diamonds today, right off the rip, getting into the green and just kept moving higher and higher throughout the trading session. Now, if you look at the heat map real quick, we can see there was a lot of red. However, Tesla out of the Mag 7 stocks was able to get back into the green. Amazon was down roughly 2.2%. Apple, Nvidia, Meta, all down over 1% on the session. Now, if we look at a chart of Tesla real quick, and as we look at this chart, Tesla, big push going into the close. And as we come back over and look at the daily chart, is this going to be a valid double bottom test? Meaning, is this going to be the area where the market tries to firm back up? MACD indicator on this second low is still showing weakness out there, which is something we most certainly need to pay close attention to. Now, if we come over and look at the SPY real quick, notice we've had this declining trend line and we've rejected off of it. And one thing I do want to go ahead and measure real quick, let's look at the last couple swings off of this trend line. If we look at this move right here, the S&P dropped roughly 4.19%. We look at the next leg down off that trend line, we dropped 3.63%. And then this last final leg that we've had, we dropped 4.07%. So it makes sense that at this area, we would start to get a bounce. However, notice low number 1, low number 2, and now low number 3, the MACD indicator across all of those lows continues to trend lower. That could be a warning sign and something we need to pay very close attention to. Looking over here at the 30-minute chart, we can see as we came down and made this new low out here today, look at the MACD indicator, basically at an equal low of what we saw on Friday. And we can see we had that consolidation before finally trying to push up and out of this area. Now, tomorrow, if we are trading above value area high, then I want to start turning my attention back over to that gap down that we saw on Friday, meaning gap resistance, which would be the bottom of the gap, and then maybe all the way up here, fill in the gap. Now, the next 2 days are going to be critical for stocks. If we look today, we basically had no major economic news to report on. However, come Tuesday, that's going to change. 8:30 a.m., we have the core PPI month over month coming out, and we have PPI month over month coming out. Now, that's going to be one measure of inflation. Then we look on, and on Wednesday, we have this CPI or CPI, as some people would like to call it, coming out. Now, let me know in the comment section down below. Do you guys think inflation is going to show hotter over the next 2 days? Or do you think inflation is going to be coming in a little bit weaker? Now, let's not forget, we're only 15 days away from the next FOMC meeting. And as we come over and start looking at, let's say, the dollar index, notice the dollar index made it up, completing its ABC pattern. Now, we're going to see, does the dollar index start to fall back here just a bit? We take a look at crude oil, rocket ship on the way up, almost hitting our next ABC target to the upside at 79.69. Then we look at the precious metal gold. Yikes, getting smacked down right off the 78.6 fib level, and that could actually start to set up an ABC pattern down. We'll talk about that more in tomorrow's video. Then we come over and look at the 10-year yield. 10-year yield still trying to push up towards its ABC pattern completion at 5.03%. So if we see yields continue to rise, that is going to be a problem out here for the stock market. Now, if you like a way to support the channel at no additional cost to yourself, check out the 3 prop firms I trade with: Apex Trader Funding, My Funded Futures, and Take Profit Trader. Right now, you can get the best deal out there using the promo codes and the links down below. Now, when we come over and start looking at the futures markets real quick, we look at the S&P and we start looking over here at the 4-hour chart, and notice we were able to come down towards this high volume node, actually got a little bit lower on the edge of this high volume area. However, there's a couple areas we want to talk about. One of them we talked about in the live stream. This is going to be a point of interest, basically candle wick to the candle body. You can see we came up into that area. However, in Sunday's video, we talked about this as well. We have this untested value area low at 59.26.5. To me, this is going to be a critical level that I most certainly want to pay attention to. I want to look for ways to trade up towards this area over the next couple of days, and tomorrow and Wednesday, we do have some major catalysts that could provide some more volatility in this market. Now, we come over and look at the daily profile, and you can see this afternoon just ripping on the way up. And this is one of the areas we were talking about on the live stream. One of the runners I had for the micro DCA trade was coming in right around 58.88. Now, we did fall a little bit short, but we were able to make it all the way up to 58.82.75. Now, notice, what are we doing today? Well, it's very simple. We're closing above value area high. So just like we talked about with that weekly profile where we closed outside of value, then we want to anticipate that tomorrow or the following day, highly probable we come back and we test 58.54 as we did close outside of that area. Then we'll see if we can actually dip down towards the point of control at 58.31 Now, value area low is going to come in at 58.13.25. So tonight, if I see selling opportunities, this right here, meaning value area high, is going to be a runner target that I most certainly want to focus on. Now, as we jump back over and look at the QQQs again, very similar to the S&P 500. We've had this decline in trend line. We continue to reject off of it. The MACD indicator continues to make lower lows as each of these lows also do so. So on the daily chart, we are seeing no signs of any type of bullish MACD divergence. Then on the 4-hour chart, you can see the low we made out here today. The MACD indicator also made a new low. But then as we start looking at, let's say, the 30-minute chart, notice the MACD indicator did not go much lower on this secondary low. And today, we did get within the gap from today. However, we did not fill that gap. So ideally, I'd love to see nothing more than a pullback, maybe early on with the news coming out tomorrow, that actually gets the market rocketing back up and essentially filling the gap that was left behind from today. Then we come over and look at the NASDAQ futures real quick. Notice one of the areas we were able to take out that untested point of control last week. We came into this high volume area. Now the market's trying to reject back up. Keep in mind, we still have this weekly value area low that has not been tested, 21,219.00. Last week, we closed substantially below it. Now, if we start firming back up, this would be a runner weekly target I would want to focus on, along with this untested point of control at 21,341. Then, as we dive down and start looking at the daily profiles real quick, notice, just like we talked about with the S&P 500, we closed way above value area high. Now, value area high will be coming in at 20,886.75. The point of control will be down here at about 20,764.75. Value area low will be 20,740.75. Now, I'm not so excited about a retest of the point of control unless we start getting back below value area high. Now, over the next 2 days, I will be actively looking to target today's value area high for a potential retest of that area. But when we start scrolling this chart out a little bit, some of the key areas that I still want to focus on, keep in mind all the way up here, if we get some good inflation data coming out, this structure breakdown point right up here will be a point of interest maybe later on in the week, 21,233, and that zone goes all the way up to 21,241. Now, if we go ahead and we look real quick back at the weekly chart, notice right where that value area low also comes into play. that value low is very close near that structure breakdown point that I just mentioned over here on the daily profile. So certainly something we most certainly want to pay close attention to. Also today, I would classify this as a double bottom trading pattern. Now let's see what that pattern would actually complete. We want to go ahead and measure, and we can see we basically almost made it all the way up to the completion of that pattern. We're going to go ahead and call it right around 21,000. Now, if you want to learn how to use audio to better time your trades, make sure to watch this video right here.